Good afternoon. A very warm welcome to our HOD ma'am, Professor Devakil ma'am, and today's speaker, Dr. Anshalali Tiger. My name is Dr. Pallavi. I am Assistant Professor in History, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Integral University, Lucknow. Our today's speaker is Dr. Anshalali Tiger. He have his expertise in history, and in previous lecture, previously he enlightened us with his knowledge on modern history. And the today's subtopic is the decline of Mauryan Empire. And Anshal sir, now you can proceed with your lecture.
Thank you, Dr. Pallavi. So, as we all know, in the last lecture we have studied the Dhamma of Ashoka and how the Dhamma of Ashoka emerged as a way of life, incorporating a number of ideals and practices in the Mauryan society. So, the major thing to understand and to get the knowledge about that the Dhamma of Ashoka changes the way of life of the Mauryan society, and Ashoka abstains from the killing of uh, was an important principle, and and also was the insistence of the considerate family relationship and the social relationship, whether these were between parents and children, elders and young people, and friends of the various ideological sects. So, what would be regarded as a program of social welfare in the 20th century, such as the providing medical facilities, good communication, and the prohibiting useless expenditure on the superstitions, was also included in the Mauryan society. Moderation was the keynote of the thought and action during the Mauryan society. Yet, to begin with these, there was no attempt to any kind of the principle which were suggested and was left to the each individual to make a choice. In the later edicts, Ashoka, we have noticed a marked change. In the major pillar edicts, the advice became more abstract and is far from less valuable than that given in the major edicts of the Ashoka. So the author is Ashoka, and so obsessed with the and so he is so obsessed with the idea of the success of the Dhamma that is reality of the situation does not appear to register. In interpreting the term of the Dharma, we must be aware of the equating it with the Buddhist Dharma. So, or any other accepted religion or the Buddhist religion, which we call this generic term. The true interpretation of the Dharma can easily only came about after a detailed analysis of who used them, the term, and the what in what context. To suggest that all the Dhamma or the Dhammas expressed in the literature, the thought of ancient ideas are identical or nearly so, would be as the to maintain the meaning of the term of the socialism and used in the any context the past 200 years has been identical and uh, nearly so. Fortunately, there is no need to seek question from the or the equation from the Dhamma of Asoka as has been frequently done in the past. There is a large and enough reliable body of literature in his own edicts which provide the answer to the question what was the Dhamma of Asoka. And as far as the concept of the Dhamma is concerned, that the concept of Dhamma used in the sense of law and social order by no means new to the modern India. Asoka, with the propagation of his Dhamma made an attempt to humanize it with and show that in fact that the what mattered most was virtuous behavior. The ability to distinguish between the behavior is what distinguishes mean or the man from the rest of the creation, and the practice of the virtue can be made common to the all men. The Dhamma consisted such behavior and ignore the all barrier of this sectarian belief. As we have said before, Dhamma was largely an ethical concept related to the individual in the context of the society and or the including the society of the Mauryan period. In the propagation of the his Dhamma, Ashoka was attempting to or they reform the society and the narrow attitude of the religious teachings to protect the weak against the strong and to promote the his ideas in the society and the social behavior, and it's so broad in its scope that no cultural group could object to it. So this is all for the Asoka's Dhamma, and now we are trying to understand the later Mauryas and the or the ruler of the after the Asoka, and for that we can go through the in-depth analysis of the contemporary sources. And as far as the later Mauryas is concerned, the years after the death of Asoka saw the end of the Mauryan dynasty as the political force in India. Mauryan rulers continued to the rule for the another half century until the earliest part of the second century BC. The, the dynasty or the Mauryan dynasty collapsed completely and gave way to the Sung dynasty. And within this half century, there was a disintegration of the Mauryan Empire, and the vast territory held by the Asoka can be dwelt with the kingdom which can Chandragupta started his career more or less confined to the province of the Magadha. In the contrast uh, of the Asokan or the Mauryan rule, with the fullness of the evidence available on on this reign of the Asoka, there is more glimmer of the evidence on the later Mauryas. This is too is of such a confused and uncertain nature that the reconstruction of the last 50 years of the Mauryan dynasty varies from the historian to historian or the author to the author. And most of the author, each of whom can at be best suggest only the hypothetical reconstruction. Such a reconstruction of the later Mauryas is suggested also by myself. And as per the dynastic list of the later Mauryas were also available from the many sources, a comparison of these lists or the Mauryan rulers, whether evidence is available and individual rulers may provide in the best starting point. As per the Quranic sources, give extensive king list of the later Maurya, but these lists are much uh, at variance as will be appeared in the Puranas. So, as per the Vayu Purana and the Brahmana Purana, there were many rulers in the Asokan, in the Mauryan period, later Mauryan period. Mainly, as we go through the Vayu Purana and Brahman Purana, the first name came after the Asoka is Kunal, and after that Bandhupalit, and then Indrapalit, after that Devavarna, after that Sadhanus, and lastly the Brihadrath of the Mauryan period, or the last ruler of the Mauryan period. So, as per the Vayu Purana and Brahmana Purana, The last ruler of the Mauryan Empire is Brihadrath. The dynasty ended with the Brihadrath as he was assassinated by the Pushyamitra Sung, or the founder of the Sunga dynasty. Since this event is mentioned by all the Puranas, so we shall not refer to it as on every occasion. As per the Matsya Purana, uh, a list was given by the Matsya Purana. As per the Matsya Purana, Asoka succeeded by the Dasrath. After there is Samprati, Sadhavan, and lastly Vrihadath. As per the Vishnu Puran, after the Ashoka, Suyas succeeded the Mauryan throne, and after that Dasrath, and then Samgata, and the after that Salisuka, then Somvarman, then Satdhavan, and then Brihadath. So Vayu Purana, and which refers the list that was already provided by the major historian of the ancient India. And as per this list, after the Asoka, Kunala succeeded the Mauryan throne, and then Bandhupalit, then Dasona, then Dasrath, then Samprati, then Salisuka, after that Dev Dharman, and then Satdhanavan, and lastly the Brihadath. If we compile these list or the name into the one, then we should obtain the uh, major name of the later Mauryan rulers who succeeded the throne after the Asoka. So after the after the compilation of these name, we can go through that the after the Asoka there was a ruler named as a Kunal, and then Bandhupalit, then Indrapalit. After that Dasona became the king, then Dasrath, then Samprati, then Salisuka, then Devarman and Satdharman, and lastly the Brihadath. So, however, this list is not widely acceptable, and the one statement on which all the Pranas are in the agreement is that the dynasty, the Mauryan dynasty, lasted almost 137 years. The first three Mauryan or the Mauryas account for the first 85 years for the dynasty, which leave 52 years to be distributed among the later Mauryas. So the list is invalidate since it adds up to a total of the only 85 years, and so in fact are all the other pranic list, since each of them totals either more or less than 55 years. Thus we can see that there are many variations in the pranic list as well as the other list, so no single one can be accepted as a completely authentic. Other sources has also given the list of the later Mauryas. Among them, the one of the major source of the work is Asok Vadana, and as per the Asok Vadana, after the Asoka, Sampadi became the king, and then Brihaspati, and then Varasasen, and after that the Pusya Dharman, and then Pushyamitra. As per the Jaina tradition, uh, the Jaina tradition only left two names in this list, that the Asoka was followed by his grandson Samprati, and then the son of Kunal. Another tradition or the Tibetan historian, the Tarantha, the basic himself on the Buddhist sources, as per this list, after the Asoka, Vigat Shoka was became the king, and then Veersena became the king. So one of the famous and most important contemporary writing known as a Ras Tarangidi of the Kalana introduced a completely new name as the successor of the Asoka in the Jaluka, or the king of Kashmir. He was followed by the Damodar. The only evidence we have from the European classic sources in the list that the Poly, Polybius, who write that in the 206 BC, that that the Antiochus the Great of Syria renewed his friendship with the uh, Asoka, and who is described as the Indian king. Polybius then adds the following remark: here he procured more elephants so that his total force of them now amounted to 150. And after a further distribution of corn to his troops, set out himself with the army, leaving Antichorus of the Seasoners to the collect the treasure which the king had agreed to pay. So we shall discuss the we can discuss the identification of this king a little later. So the story of accession of the Vedas by the Pusumit is repeated by the one of the contemporary historian or the ancient writer Bana or the Ban in the Harsh Charitra. He writes that the wicked general Pusmitra killed his father or his master, the Mauryan Brihadrat, who had little sense and to whom the general had pretended to show the whole army in a review. So another possible successor to Asoka, whose existence is attested by the historical evidence, was his son Tivar, who is referred to the together with his mother Karuviki in the Queen's Edict. But this is the role of or the sole or the single reference to the prince, since he is not mentioned in the literary sources unless under the another name. If our earlier hypothesis is correct, then the Queen Karuviki was the same as the Buddhist legend, and both were being described as the Asoka's second queen. The former being her personal name and the later her official name adopted after she became the chief queen. Then the disappearance of the Tivra is understandable. The sources suggest that she was ambitious woman who had considerable amount of control over the actions of the aging Asoka. Tivra may also have been born to Asoka in his old age and may therefore have been a spoiled and a favorite or the favorite child. If we Tisharakha was resentful of Asoka's interest in Buddhism and regarded it as a rival to his interest in her. As the legend of her enduring the Bodhi tree suggests, that then it would not be beyond bound of the possibilities that is nagged at the king to make. Tivra was his, Tivar his higher, as, as an over-ambitious mother, she may have not be had the young prince in her power. He would be therefore be resented by other princes, his stepbrother, some of whom, such as Kunal, were considerably older than him. And owing to his youth, maybe we shall have ignored him after their father's death. If it is true that the Kunala succeeded Asoka, and if there be any truth in the legend that the Tisharakha had Kunala had blinded them, then it is not to be wondered at the both the Tisharakha and her son disappear from the scene after the death of Asoka. So the Kunala is frequently mentioned as the successor of the Asoka, as per the Buddhist tradition. Mention a story of his being sent to the suppress a revolt at the Takshila, which we have believed to be historically untrue. Kunala also plays a significant role in the another Buddhist legend, where Tisarakka is responsible for the having him blinded, and the authenticity of his legend is also doubtful. Nevertheless, it seems that the Kunala was the son of the Asoka and Viceroy at the Takshila, and made possible, if not probable, successor of the Ashoka. So, on the other hand, the Matsya Puran state that the Ashoka was followed on the throne by his grandson Dasrath, and the Vishnu Puran speaks of the Suyas succeeded Ashoka and Dasrath coming after the Suyas. So this is the only occasion on the which Suyas is mentioned in any of the sources. It has been suggested that the Suyas was another name of Kunala or the Kunal. This may well be so. So the Kunala is the said to have been named after the birth or after the a bird with the beautiful eyes, owing to the beauty of his own eyes. It is possible that he took the official name Suyas of great glory on becoming king, and a custom prevailed in the many dynasties. There have been a connection between the names Suyas and the that given him the Vedan or the Divya Vadan. But this identification is very tentative. So, if the story about his having been landed is true, then this would be added reason for his wishing to change his name. However, if he was blinded, then the fact of his coming to the throne would be in very doubtful. So, law books declare and customary uses mention that a person having lost any vital faculty should be automatically executed from the kingship, and it is unlikely that the Mauryan court would have permitted to the blind prince to rule. Whether the Buddhist legend are historically true or not, the fact that the Kunala or the Kunal among all the princes was the central figure in the both stories that proves that he was the important prince and may well have been the next successor. So that the story of his being blinded can be course have a metaphorical meaning, and he's blind to the Buddhism. To the Buddhist monk, anyone turning away from the Buddhism would be shutting his eyes to the right path. For a son Asoka to turn away would amount of being his blinded. So on the other hand, Dasrath, apart from being mentioned in the Matsya Puran, is also known to us from the caves in the Nagarjuna hills, which he dedicated to the Ajivikas. For that reason, a three or the three inscription ordered by the Dasrath Devanampi state that the cave were dedicated immediately on his accession, that they were inscribed soon after the reign of Asoka on, and it is clear from the script which is Asokan Brahmi script and the general tone of the inscription which are similar to the Asokan inscription. So the wish that the above may exist as long as the sun and the moon endure is the of the seventh pillar edict, where Asoka wishes men and women to conform to the principle of Dhamma for as long as the sun and the moon endures. So the dedication of the caves and the inscription and the to the use of the title Devnam P suggests that the Dasara was close in the spirit of his grandfather Ashoka. It has been argued that the phrase Dasalathena Devnam Piyana contains a refer to the Ashoka in Devnam Piyan, and this argument is based on the fact that the Ashoka always used the title of the Devnam Piya before his name, Piyadasi, and not after the later, as in this case. On the basis of this inscription, a foreign traveler translate the phrase as the cave was given by the Dasarath soon after he was crowned by the Asoka. So we do not accept this interpretation. It is quite possible that the Dasarath adopted the general title of for a king is Devanampi. The title can be placed either before the name or the after it. Thus, a monarch can be given his name and dynastic number, and then this title was followed. So, Devanampi is a grammatically correct in the inscription as the title of Dasrath, since it must qualify and agree with the king's name, which it does. So, Dasrath is expression of the sympathy with the sect to the Buddhist sect or religion or the Buddhist or the Buddhism has been commented uh, by the writers. It has also been said that the anti-Buddhist spirit of the Dasrath may be inferred from his gift to the Ajivkas and the silence of Buddhist text on his reign. And if we did not have the precedents of Asokas in these matter, this might have been a very plausible theory. But since Asoka in these matter himself dedicated cape to the Azukas and remaining at the same time an adherent Buddhist, the fact of the Dasrath having done so does not necessarily make him the against the any other sect. So at most it can be said that he held the Azukas in special favor, and since the cave were donated immediately on his accession, so that we can consider that he was much favor in the Ajivkas but not against the Ajivkas. So that the Dasrath succeeded Ashoka directly is certainly possible, as he was not too young to do so in the near about the 232 BC. So Ashoka must have been also over 30 years of age when he came to the throne. His reign lasting 37 years, and he must have been at least 30 or 67 up at his death. So this allows for a possibility of 20-year-old grandson and when the king or the Asoka died. If the boy was influenced by his grandfather, Asoka may have decided to overlook the claims of his son in favor of his grandson. If and if he did so, or if this thing happened, it must have been a cause many indignation among the sons of Asoka. So some another uh, ruler or the later ruler of the Mauryan period, Samprati also mentioned in the Matsya Puran, and it is referred to in the both Buddhist as well as the Jaina literature as the son of the Kunal. Here there is some confusion since the Purana describe him as the son of the Dasrath. According to him, or the according to the Jaina tradition, he was the grandson of the Asoka and the patron of the Jainism. So he is said to have been converted to the Jainism by the Swastin, after which he gave the religion both his active support as a ruler and encouragement in the other ways. He is mentioned as a ruling both from the Patliputra and from the also from the Ujjain. Unfortunately, we have no inscriptional record or other evidence to support these accounts. So, Buddhist literature, on the other hand, also connected Samprati with a curious legend concerning the last days of the Asoka. The king Asoka also decided to outdo the boundary of the king of Sudat and donated 100 crore of gold pieces to the Buddhist Sangha. This amount was taken from the Asoka's treasury when the only 4 crore remained to be paid. Samprati, their higher, objected on the advice of the minister Radhagupta, and then Asoka therefore began to donate his personal possessions until such a time as he was left with the only half of a mango. Finally, when the king died, or the Kasoka died, the 4 crore were paid by the ministers, and the kingdom, which was held in the forfeit, was thus retrieved and Samprati was placed on the throne. As Fayan states in his account that the near Rajgiri there was a Ashokan column bearing an inscription to commemorate the fact of the Ashoka having bestowed the inhabited part of the world on the priesthood, and then bought it back from them with the money or three occasions. So no trace of such a pillar had been yet until the date found, and it is possible that the story was related to Fanyan by local Buddhists, and it may have been confused with the inscription of on the pillar in his mind at a later date. So the Kashmir Chronicles Kalhana's Rajtarangini mentions the Asoka's successor as Jaluka, and we are told that the Asoka wished to exterminate the Malech or the foreigners, and therefore he prayed for a son, and the Jalukas was burned as a result. So this prince was is described or was a adherent Saivite and or a worshipper of the Vijayasevara and the and also the Buddhesa. His tutor is described as the vanquisher of the crowds of the Buddha, and who at the time was more powerful and flushed with the success. So this would suggest a priest fairly close to this reign of the Asoka, and Jaluka expelled the Malekshas or the foreigners who oppressed the land of, and he conquered the earth up to the oceans. In administrative matters, he increased the number of the state officials from the 7 to 18. The seven listed are the uh, Dut, Purohit, and Devaska, and Dharmadhyaksh, and the Dandadhyaksh or the Kosadhyaksh, and many more. So a legend is also related concerning the Jalukas and his relationship with the Buddhism. And he was met once day by hungry people who wished to eat his flesh. He immediately offered himself, as a result of which she showered praises upon him and revealed that he was in fact in the uh, uh, he was in effect a Mahasakya, and she requested him to build the vihar for the Kirti or ashram, which Jaluka then began to worship the divine lady, and he continued at the same time to be a Saivite. So Jaluka was succeeded by the Damodara or the Damodar II, and who is said to have the either descendant from the Asoka's race or the else belong to the some other family. The if we neglect the Jaluka in the Buddhist sources, and it may be explained by the fact that there has been there he was the pro-Hindu and the anti-Buddhist. So if his tutor had any influence on him. Nevertheless, this is an unsatisfactory explanation, since the story of the divine uh, lady would uncertainly have been elaborated upon by the Buddhist monk. The identity of the Jaluka remains uncertain, and his kingdom comprised the Kashmir and Gandhara, and later in his reign, considerable part of the northern India. Owing to the confused account of early king in the Raj Tarangini, it is possible that he was not a son of Asoka, and may have been a Kusana's king whose name has been misread. But we are opinion that he was a Mauryan, and that the name Jaluka may possibly be a confused rendering of the name of the Kunal. Jaluka is certainly foreign to any of the king list of the Maurya. And since it occurs only in the Kashmir Chronicles, it can be only be a local variant. So in the Brahmi script of the Ashoka period, the name Kunal would be written thus, like the Jalukas. So it is possible that after the invasion of Bactrian Greeks and the Kusanas with their foreign name, a name such as Jaluka became acceptable without any or the much questioning. So it is curious that the among the seven important state official mentioned in the first on the list in Dharmadhyaksh, generally in the Indian theoretical sources on the administration, priority is given to the revenue officials and treasurers officials. To a list of the superintendent of the justice, first is certainly used its preceders. So the author may have been meant a judicial officer by his term, and it may also be suggested that the mention of Dharmadhyaksh was based on a tradition recalling the Dharma Mahamantra. The special mention of the administrative improvement could totally closely, or they could tally with the closely with the administrative policy of the Mauryan in the times. So the later Yavana invasion, which threatened the Sunga power, may have been started as a sporadic attack during the time of the Kunal in or the years of the following after the death of the Asoka. It is for the interest in the seventh pillar edict, which summoning or the summing of the as it were the achievements of the Dhamma. Asoka speaks with the great satisfaction that the result within his empire. However, on the occasion that not a single reference is made to the relation with the neighboring countries, where the early edicts proclaim in no uncertain terms that the convert to the Dharma or the Dhamma, including the neighboring countries of the northwest. So it is possible that the 10 year after the issuing of the edict, the hostility of the Greeks along the northwest border was beginning to be felt. So, as we have seen, there is no reference of the Subhang Sen or to a closely similar name in any other kind of the king's list. So, the nearest possible possibilities is the Veer Sen mentioned by the Tarantha as ruling in the as the ruler of the Gandhara or the ruling in the Gandhara. The same ended in the both names may suggest a relationship between at the same time. The name Veer Sen is also absent from the Mauryan king's list. So we are told that the Asoka was succeeded by the grandson uh, Vigat Asoka and the son of the blinded Kunal. The name Vigat Asoka has obviously name of came to the Tarantata by the Divya, Divyadan, where he mentioned as a younger brother of the Asoka. So the succession continues or the continue with the Veer Sen, the son of the Vigat Asok, who is honored Buddhist, and Veer Sen is followed by his son Nanda or the Nand, who reigned for almost 29 years and who is in the terms followed by his son Mahapadma, who reigned at the Kusumpura, uh, and Chandrapal followed by the Mahan, Mahapadma, and the authors then appear to concentrate on the dynastic known to have been ruled in the Bengal, which area is described as the being ruled by the Harichandra, followed by the seven other Chandras. They all were the supporters of the Buddhism. So the last of these was the name Chandra, was deprived by is thrown by Pushmitra. At this point, the Malach or the foreign invasion took place, and Pushmitra died 5 years later. Very much later in its chronology, there appears a Chandragupta who is succeeded by the Bindusar, and then Bindusara is said to have reigned almost 35 years and was then succeeded by his son uh, Chandra or Sri Chandra, and who was in turn followed by the Dharmachandra, ruling only in the east. So it is indeed difficult to obtain historical fact from the any of the account, and this and and it is undoubtedly very confusing. So, with regard to the Mauryan dynasty alone, we can obtain two kings list. First, we told that the Asoka was followed by the Vigat Asok. Later, we told that the Bindusara succeeded by the Sri Chandra, was in turn by succeeded by the Dharmachandra. So we note that neither of the two later name were connected with the Mauryas. It is therefore possible that the Veer Sen was not connected with the Mauryas. It is therefore possible that the Veer Sen was not uh, connected with the, as we said, with the Mauryas. So it is more likely that the Tarantha was basing this information regarding Veer Sena on the fact that the Pushmitra's wife's brothers was a Veer Sen who was appointed by the Pushmitra as the commander of the frontier fortress in the Narmada region. So we may thus dismiss the possibility of Veer Sen being a Mauryan king. So of the other name of the Mauryan king mentioned in the various sources, there is confirmation of the Salisuka, listed as the fourth successor of the Asoka in the Vishnu Puran, and the also the Gargi Samhita, and an astrological work speaks of him as an unjust and wicked king, an oppressor of his people. But the most important thing is that it is professed by that after his reign the Greeks will invaded India, or the Malaysia invaded India and reached the border of the Patliputra, or the at the Patliputra. However, as he has been pointed out that this does not necessarily imply that the invasion took place immediately after the reign of the Salisuka. Since the author of the Purana were concerned mainly uh, with the narrating the major events, and the invasion referred to the may well have been that the one occurred half a century later during the Sunga period. So the list that was provided by the Ashoka Vadana is also very confusing. So Brihaspati or the Pushyadharman and the Pushyamitra are said to be succeed Samprati in the term. Clearly, Pushyamitra, the founder of the Sunga dynasty, has no place in a Maurya dynastic list, and the names of the other three do not correspond to any given in the other list. At its most, might be said that the Brihaspati is an incorrect one version of the Brihadrath. But even this is unnecessarily stretching the point. So it is more than likely that the Buddhist monk lost interest in the dynasty when its king ceased to be the patron of the Buddhism, and it resulted their dynastic list became very confused, or the confusing. So there are three main legends in the Buddhist literature connected with the last year of the Ashoka, all of which occur in the Ashoka. The first concern the revolt of the people of Takshila, in which Kunala was sent to be suppressed. The second involves the Kunala as well as, and in this story of his being blinded at the his stepmother, the queen of the Asoka. Then the third legend is said that the Asoka being left with the only half a mango to bestow on the Sangha at the end of his reign. So we cannot prove that the whether the event described in the two later legend actually took place or not. So since there is no evidence to confirm or to disprove them, but some indication of the state of the affairs during the last year of the Ashoka's reign is available from the situation described in these three legends. So they do suggest that towards the ends of the uh, or it's relate the legend from a local perspective without the necessity of the having to fit a tradition used by the other Buddhist chronicles. So the According to the text, that the arrival of the Kunala is Takshila is not due to a revolt in the city. We are told that the king of the Takshila uh, or the Gandhara, not the Takshila, it is Gandhara. We are told that the king of the Gandhara died and that the people wished to place themselves under the protection of the great king of the Mauryan period, Ashoka. So the Kunal was sent to the government and was so successful that the Ashoka decided to divide the empire, placing the reign from the Indus as far as the Chinese frontier under the Kunala, and this area would included mainly the area of the Khotan, Kashmir, and Gandhara. So it is possible that the people on the borders of the Gandhara asked for the or the stranger and the stronger Mauryan protection when the Bactrian Greeks began to harass them, or the Malay, as per the sources, began to harass them. So the Bactrian revolt against the Seleucids had taken place during the Asoka's life, and the under the Diodotus first and second. So the later Mauryas saw the rise of uh, another rulers who don't, and no doubt saw that it was an opportunity or a moment to invade the northern part of the now fast northern part of the India or the Mauryan Empire, and it is interest of the political strategy and military strength that Ashoka had to safeguard the northwest frontier of the India, and this appears to be confirmed by the Rajtaringadi also, which speaks by the Jaluka expelling the Maleksha from the Gandhara. So the success of the Kunal or the Kunala's administration of the northwest area may have been suggested to Ashoka that the possibility of the dividing the empire after his death, and the fear of the such an event may have led to the attempting to the harm Kunal in some ways. So the Kunal Sutra repeats the legend of the blinding of the Kunal and the and it further relates another legend of how his eyesight was restored to him by a bhikshu called Ghos. So, needless to say, the Kunal, on reviving back his eyes, is converted to the Buddhism. Although the some text earlier describe him as a great supporter of the Buddhism, such important inscription tend to suggest that a considerable fabrication with the regard to the this legend or the Kunal. So, at some point of interest is the mention of the Yasas as a Whig minister of the Asoka. In the Asok Vadana, Yasas is among the more pious Buddhist elders, but in the Kunal Sutra, he became a secular Buddhist and a patroness to whom are attributed many disagreeable actions and who is opposed to the saintly Buddhist elder Sumanas. So in the Asokvadana, we are told that it was the minister of the reverse view and who advised the higher apparent to the curtail and finally to stop the altogether the gift which Asoka gave as a charity to the bhikshus from the royal treasury. It is also appear only with the narrating the major event that the invasion referred to may well have been one of the occurred after a half century later during the Sung period. So there are three major legends in the Buddhist text or the Buddhist literature connected with the last year of the Asoka, all of which occur in the Asokvadana. So as per the Asokvadana, there is another source containing various versions of these legends, which throw a different light on the same event. These so have been this shows that the these sources have been generally ignored by the most of the historians, and and particularly with regard to that the event after the death of Ashoka. So, according to the text, the arrival of Kunal in the Takshila is not due to the revolt in the city. So we are told that the king of Gandhara died and that the people wished to place themselves under the protection of Soka, and and Kunal was sent to the govern them and was so successful that Asoka decided to divide the empire from the Indus as far as the Chinese frontiers. So, on the basis of the Divadan legend, is argued that the Ashoka abdicated and became a monk, and it is related that the Radha Gupta, the minister of Bindusara, who supported Ashoka's attempt at becoming king, forced Ashoka when he had become unpopular with his subjects at the end of his reign. So this legend is highly suspect, and since it is unlikely that the Radha Gupta could remain such a powerful minister through two long reigns, those of the Bindusara and Ashoka, totaling over almost 60 years. So it is unlikely that an event of such great importance would have been overlooked by the Buddhist chronicles in other sources, since apart from its being good material for the moralizing on it, and would also provided welcome opportunities for the imaginative legends. So in the Ashokvadana, legend of the half mango referred to be as a Samprati, the son of Kunal. Yet the Matas and Vishnu Puran speaks of the Dasratha as the successor of the Ashoka, and the inscriptions of the former in the Nagarjuna hill. So here we have noticed earlier suggest that the empire of the Ashoka was partition are either just prior to his death or after his death. So the western part, including the northwest frontier, Gandhara and Kashmir, was governed by the Kunal, and the eastern part was left to the Ashoka's grandson, Dasra. So it is possible that the Kunal gradually extended his portion to include the western province of the empire. So the after the Dasrath, since he was also the grandson of the Asoka, and the mistake is not impossible. So, furthermore, if Samprati happened to be more sympathetic to the Buddhism than the Dasarath, it would be all the more reason for him to regard it as a successor of the Asoka. So the identity of Dasrath remained hidden in many ways, and he was a young man of about 20 years, and he became to the when he came to the throne, and supported by the ministers. Samprati is also mentioned in the Matsya Puran as the son of the Dasrath. So this is probably a mistake, since according to other accounts, Samprati and Dasrath were first cousins. If, however, it can be proved uh, that the Suesas was in fact another name of the Kunala or the Kunal, and not the name of the minister, then it would be seems that the Dasrath was the brother of the Samprati, and according to the Puranas, Dasrath reigned almost the 8 years, and this would suggest that he could die uh, without their successor, and old enough to come to the throne without uh, any regency of some sort. So thus the same source speaks of the Kunal ruling for 8 years. He must have died at the same time as the Dasara. So that the Samprati now ruling in the west may have been successfully reigned the throne at the Patliputra, thus uniting the empire again. So this event occurred almost in between the 223 BC. So, however, the empire had probably already begun to disintegrate. Jaina sources also mentioned that the Samprati ruled from the Ujjain and the Patliputra. This would suggest that the capital of the western part of the empire or the Mauryan Empire was moved from the north to the Ujjain. So the decade following was to see the conflict the twin Antiochus III of the Syria and another ruler of the bacteria with him in which bacteria emerged as a strong power and ready to the threaten northwest western part of the India. So it is quite likely that the number of the principalities in the trans-Indian region broke away from the Mauryan Empire, while Samprati was occupied and established himself in the Patliputra. Gradually, the concentration of the attention moved to the from the Magad and the main line of the Mauryan dynasty lived out its years of the Patliputra, unable to prevent the control, the breaking up of the empire in the more distant regions. So after the reign of the 9 years of the Samprati, that was followed by the Salisuka, who ruled for the almost 13 years, and if the Gargi Samhita is to be credited, his reign further reduced the power of the Mauryas. So meanwhile, the Vayu and Matsya Purana, uh, uh, including the Brahman Puran, mention three names which are again isolated. So, in so far as they have not mentioned in any other sources, there are, and these are the name are as mentioned by the Vayu and Brahman Puran, the Bandhu Palit, Indrapalit, and the Dasona. So the identification of these three names is extremely difficult, since no other name even resembling them are to be found in the Mauryan king's list. So even the Puranas are not so uncertain uh, to the relationship of one to other. Indrapalit, for instance, is referred to as the Dayada of the Bandi Bandupalita, a word which has been translated both as a brother or the higher. So, in a recent tradition, that or the another a recent tradition, as per the recent tradition and the recent historian, uh, translated this name as a phrase or the phrase as a meaning mainly mm, meaning as a protected by the king's man, and there is suggested by that the some things along the lines of the regency during the reign of one of these king. So we can suggest that there were member of the royal family who set themselves as the king in the part of the Mauryan Empire other than the Patliputra, or the possibility there is much possibility that they rule the area of the Ujjain. So the successor of the Salisuka is mentioned as a Somvarman, uh, mentioned as the Somvarman in the Vishnu Purana. So this tale is fairly close with the Devarman of the Vayu Puran, who is said to have the followed Dasona and ruled for a 7 year. And it is also possible that at this point that the Vayu Purana breaks off from the local tradition and resume the list with the kings of the Patliputra. So there is an agreement among all three Puranas, including the Vayu, Matsya, and Vishnu, over the last two kings of the Maurya dynasty, and these were the uh, Satudhavan or the Satdhanus, who is said to have ruled almost the 8 years, and finally the Brihadrat, who ruled for 7 years and was killed by the Pushyamitra soon. So on the if we conclude this that the king's list of the after the Ashoka, so the empire was divided into the western and eastern frontier, So the former was ruled by the Kunal and then for a short while by the Samprati, and its southern part was, the portion was perhaps governed by the Bandhupalit, Indrapalit, and Dasona. So this part of the empire was threatened by the Bactrian Greeks or the Malech in the northwest and by the ambition of the group within the area such as the Andhra in the northern Deccan. So the succession of the main line of the Maurya in the eastern half of the empire, ruling from the Patliputra, took the after the death of the Asoka. So as per the, if we can compile the actual ruler of the Mauryan, later Mauryan period, so we can form a list that after the death of Asoka, Dashrath became the king, and then Samprati, and then Salisuka, and then Devarman, and after that the uh, Dhanvan became the king, and the lastly, or the in this list, the last ruler of the Mauryan uh, king was the Brihandra. So if we cover the period, so we have a total of the 52 years, which combined with the 85 of the first three major ruler of the modern period, and it gives us the 137 years of the modern dynasty. Since uh, Puranas does not state uh, correct information. So they are only concentrated with the actual regional years of the each king. So assuming that the Asoka died in the near about the 233 uh, uh, or the 32 BC. So we may state that the Mauryan dynasty came to an end in between the period of 181 or the 180 BC. So this is the all for the later Mauryan period. So we see uh, that the later Mauryan rulers were very confusing, and many sources suggest different kinds of name in their records. And in this lecture, I have tried to compile all the names as per the different kinds of sources into the one, and also tried to find the uh, history of the later Mauryan rulers. And that's it for the today. Thank you. If anyone wants to ask any question, you can go now. I think there are there is no question. So today's lecture ends here. Thank you.